I realized years ago that my son is going, I mean, there is prejudice and discrimination in society. We know that. I mean, in all kinds of areas. I'm not just disability. And my son uses a power wheelchair. And we realized early on that whenever Benjamin goes out to get a job one day, that he's going to face different barriers than his sister is. Because people are going to see his wheelchair, and they're going to automatically presume that he's incompetent and that he can't do the job. And so federal law says that children with disabilities, are entitled to a, FAPE, free and appropriate public education. And we realized that my son doesn't need just an appropriate education, he needs a better education. Because our children, if we expect him, our children with disabilities, if we expect him to enter the workforce, they're going to be competing for a job against people who don't have disabilities. And it's not any different in the historical situation that if you're old enough to have lived through it, the civil rights era, whenever we said you cannot discriminate on the basis of color, skin color, that people of color who applied for jobs that at once had only been held by white people or that they're in competition with white people, that they had to be better. They couldn't just have the same degree or the same experience. They had to be better. Now, is that unfair? Yeah, but that's the reality. So it's like children with disabilities need a better education. And when they're in self-contained classrooms, when they're segregated, they're getting a substandard education. They're getting a very, under-education, very, very limited education. The other thing that's important about inclusion is that, again, we've created these, many institutions all over our communities and public schools and, group homes or residential facilities or shelter workshops and those kind of places. And part of what happens with inclusive education is that when children are included in general ed classrooms with the appropriate accommodations, supports, and modifications, they get a good general education that they need to go on to college or post-secondary education or go into the workforce. So that's one benefit of it. But the other benefit of inclusive education is that it has the potential to change the fabric of our society. So if I use my son, for example, who was included, so let's go back to when he's in second grade. He's 27 years old today. Let's go back to when he was second grade. He was 7 years old, had all these little friends. So at the age that his peers are now, they're all 27, let's say. Some of them, perhaps, maybe one of them is working at in the Human Resources Department of business, here. If a person with a disability comes and applies for a job in his Human Resources Department, because he grew up with classmates who had disabilities, he's not going to have the same bias and prejudice that other people who didn't grow up with them. So when somebody, let's call him John Jones, whatever, John Smith, and he was one of my son's classmates, and he's the head of the HR department in charge of hiring. And so somebody that uses a wheelchair is going to come in and apply for a job. That guy, that human resource guy, is not going to say, oh, we can't hire somebody like that. Of course, they wouldn't say that to the person directly. That would be, cause for a lawsuit. But they, well, no, the position's filled or, da-da-da-da. He's going to go, oh, guy, that's like my friend Benjamin, back in second grade. Or a person with Down syndrome. Oh, my friend Dylan who had Down syndrome. Or Chris who had autism, who would do some kind of funny behaviors. But Chris was one of my friends. So inclusion, when kids grow up together, the reason we have so much prejudice is that, I didn't go to school with children with disabilities. I don't even think I knew they existed. Because they're invisible. You don't see them. They're off at a distance somewhere. When my son was included in school, when he was in Cub Scouts, when he took drama lessons, when he was in karate class, when he was on the T-ball team, my son's physical presence in all those activities, just inclusive things, just ordinary things. Benjamin's physical presence can change more people than I can ever do in a million years. Because people realize, oh, okay, yeah, this kid, his speech is a little difficult sometimes, and yeah, he uses a wheelchair, and he doesn't write with a pencil, it's like, so, well, he writes on his computer, we'll help him write something. Not a big deal. And that's what we all have to do, is as family members, as parents, as people with disabilities themselves, we have to get ourselves out there. We have got to take our rightful places in society. And the longer we stay hidden away, the longer, again, we don't have a lot of institutions like we used to, but we might as well have, because people are still invisible. They're still not part of their society. And in my son's case, we always made sure that Benjamin was included. Again, he taught people on the T-ball team. He didn't teach them by teaching them. He just taught them by his presence. It's like not a big deal to have a kid with a disability.